Well, Australia's former ambassador to Israel and former Wentworth MP Dave Sharma is returning to politics after winning a Liberal pre-selection over the weekend to replace outgoing Senator Marise Payne in federal parliament. And he joins me now. Dave Sharma, new senator, congratulations. Are you planning on focusing on foreign policy areas when you return to the Senate? And you've been very vocal in recent weeks in support of Israel since the war has started.
Well, look, certainly, Sharri, that will be one of my areas of interest, but I guess ultimately I'll be guided by what are the priorities of the people of New South Wales. And right now, of course, that's a rising cost of living, lack of housing affordability, increased costs for life's basics, rising prices for fuel, electricity, gas and everything else. And so that will obviously be a big focus of mine as well, and holding the Labor government to account for their failure to control inflation and the failure to address people's cost of living concerns.
Yeah. Now, on the Israel war on Hamas, we've seen over the weekend 3 sets of Israeli hostages released by Hamas as part of this deal. The concern is that there's still more than 190 or 200 hostages who are being held by Hamas. There might be more released if this pause in fighting continues. But I'm hearing that, and I've been reporting, that Hamas doesn't have clarity over where all the hostages are. Some of them might be held by other terrorist groups. Are you concerned that we might not see the return of all of the hostages?
Look, I've been very concerned about the fate of the hostages since they were taken on the 7th of October, Sharri. And I would just say, and it's important to always remind the viewers of this, that the taking of hostages is a war crime and their continual detention by Hamas is a continuing war crime. So those of people who are always out in the media talking about war crimes and accusing Israel of this should just bear in mind that Hamas is clear of the most flagrant and horrific war crime with its taking of these hostages. Now, some of the hostages have been released, and that is a great thing, but some of them are orphaned. Some of them are the sole surviving family members because their other family members were slaughtered and killed in the communities in which they lived in Israel when this attack happened. And whilst it's great every hostage that has been released has made it out and we don't yet know their health or their whereabouts, I am very worried about what I'm hearing about the other hostages. And also, you know, Hamas does not seem to have the same accounting for them as Israel does. And that begs the question of, have they been killed? Is another group holding them? Who is that other group, and how are we going to negotiate or mediate with that other group for their release?
And it's part of the reason, in all likelihood, why Hamas hasn't allowed the Red Cross in, because, you know, it will become clear just how many hostages they have, and they're using this as leverage over Israel. Dave Sharma, what's your view also on the media bias during this war, in particular this story that we saw front page of The Australian on Saturday, where there's this letter, this petition signed by hundreds of journalists to try and treat Israel like Hamas, with as much scepticism as a terror organisation?
I was really troubled by that letter, Sharon. It's important. I mean, people need to understand that there's a qualitative moral difference here between Hamas, a listed terrorist organisation that cares not a jot for civilian lives, whether it's its own Palestinian civilian lives, or certainly not Israeli civilian lives, and the legitimate armed forces which operate under rules of discipline and laws of armed conflict of a democratic liberal state in Israel. This idea that journalists should be treating Hamas official sources of information with the same degree of credibility as that provided by Israel, it just beggars belief. I mean, Hamas has shown throughout this conflict, including in the early days with its own attack on the Al Arabiya hospital, that it has no compunctions whatsoever about feeding false information to the media to support its propaganda narrative. Now, of course, the media should be treating Hamas information with more scepticism. Yes, they should still be treating Israeli sources of information with scepticism and curiosity and asking questions. But Israel has not shown itself unwilling to answer those questions. And in fact, the briefings you see from the IDF and other senior Israeli government spokespeople, and their willingness to go on international media, their willingness to come on shows like yours and expose themselves to that sort of scrutiny and questioning, I think shows you that they are a responsible actor in the information domain, particularly, and the journalists need to reflect that.
Look, just quickly before you go, I've got a documentary on air tomorrow night which continues the investigation into the origins of COVID-19. Do you think that after all these years, 3.5 years now, do you think there should still be a formal international inquiry into how the pandemic began?
Well, absolutely there should be, and that is something that Australia pushed for in the early stages of the pandemic. I mean, I know it's easy now to think, look, the pandemic's behind us, what's the point in having recriminations? But the whole point of these sorts of inquiries is not to conduct recriminations, it's to find out what worked, what didn't, what went wrong, what were the early warning signs that we missed, what response mechanisms worked well, so that we are better prepared for the next pandemic. And I think we should all know after COVID-19 that the next pandemic is not a question of if, it's a question of when, and we need to be better prepared. And being better prepared means understanding how did this disease break out, what were its origins, and what were the things we need to do better next time in terms of detecting and preventing its rapid spread. It was not handled well when it broke out in China. The Chinese authorities masked up the fact that it had escaped. They did not close their borders. They did not share information with the World Health Organization. We all need to learn lessons from that. China's government, yes, but we can all do that around the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it might mean changing the type of research that labs globally are doing as well. Dave Sharma, congratulations once again, and thank you so much for your time.